The Northfield Hotel is where I always stay when visiting Minehead. It's comfortable, friendly, the food is truly wonderful, and the garden's delightful. There's even a mini golf course. Surrounded by lovely trees, you feel relaxed as soon as you arrive. It really is like being in the country, with squirrels, birds singing in the trees, and even the occasional fox. You have to book well ahead because it's very popular and guests return again and again. I always look forward to returning here, knowing I'll be refreshed in mind and body. It overlooks the Bristol Channel, so the air is always fresh and clean, and yet is located close to the centre of Minehead, which is a handy advantage. Another of the many advantages is being able to walk across the lawn, down a slope, through a garden gate in the wall, and cross over a road to enter Blenheim Gardens on one's way to the town. Even in early spring they are beautifully kept, with the flower beds freshly planted with lovely blooms that seem to glow in the early morning sunshine. Everywhere is clean and tidy, and a credit to those responsible for tending them. Whatever time of year, the gardens are a joy for locals or visitors to Minehead to pass through or rest up and enjoy the sunshine and flowers, away from the busy world around them. After a few minutes' walk, you come to the exit and join Minehead's High Street. And it's just along there that the terminus of the West Somerset Railway is located. This railway has been a favourite of mine for some years. However, recently a new and important addition has been made, the installation at Minehead station of a turntable to enable locos to be turned round. However, a turntable by itself is not quite so impressive, but put a loco on it and it means something. Here the West Somerset Railway's own West Country Class Pacific Braunton, now completely restored and running beautifully, just fits on the new turntable. For the 2009 Spring Gala, it was announced that there would be some important visiting locos, the most important and exciting of which, for me, would be the famous LMS loco Royal Scot. It was these two things that made me decide to make another visit and another film. Standing there in lovely early morning sunshine, the iconic loco looked superb, having just completed a very expensive overhaul after 40 years as a static exhibition at Bressingham. And today it will be running. The railway is getting ready for another day, and the dirty job of getting locos ready is being carried out, clearing the smoke box of ash, which is a very dirty job. Two typical railway types discuss the weather or the football results, whilst the other chap does all the work. On the platform, with Minehead in the background, the first train of the day waits as loco number 88 backs onto it. And then a big surprise. One of the visiting locos, the VA4 Pacific Bittern, arrives in readiness to take another train out. What a sheer joy it is to see one of these wonderful locomotives back in service again. This is one of the remaining streamlined masterpieces designed by Sir Nigel Gresley. Back to my train. Soon after an enthusiast takes a look in the cab, I got on board, ready for the off. And then we travelled along the coast in some lovely weather, along the Severn estuary, to our first stop, which would be Blue Anchor. The train slows as we approach the station, passing first of all a level crossing and then the signal box. This is one of the passing points on the West Somerset Railway, and looking out on the opposite side, an approaching train enters the station. with an engine running tender first, it soon becomes obvious it's one of the former Great Western Railway engines doing grand service. As the train pulls away again, I decided to get out here and see what was happening. A few minutes later, and after a sudden shower, another train enters the station after being held outside for a while by a signal. This is the Sherwood Forester, making its slow and rather ponderous way into the station. Again, unfortunately, going backwards. But nevertheless, a good study of power, classic lines, and steam. As that train waits, the signalman looks out for the next arrival. And here it comes, yet another Great Western Railway engine, again running in reverse, arrives with the next train that will go on to Minehead. This is Kinlet Hall, one of the many Hall classes of engines that did yeoman service during their lifetime. And as the ever-enthusiastic photographers rush to take their pictures and have a chat with the drivers, the train soon goes on its way to Minehead, which you can see in the background. Leaving Blue Anchor, I continued on my journey in lovely sunshine and travelling through the most glorious Somerset countryside. The next stop would be Washford, and I arrived just in time to see a double-headed train come in, with the West Somerset Railway's own West Country Class Pacific Braunton as the second engine. This engine has been beautifully restored to running order and is a great credit to all those people who've done so much work to get it back to this as new condition. Away from the glamour of the big engines, a little saddle tank and goods train waits patiently, and then the Royal Scot itself appears, unfortunately running in reverse. But nevertheless, what a wonderful sight. After 40 years, it's back on the road again. With the guard keeping an eye on passengers, I make my way to the front of the train just in time to see Royal Scot pull out. The little saddle tank is still waiting patiently to do some shunting, but then suddenly all eyes turn to the most wonderful sight of a streak as the streamlined Pacifics of Sir Nigel Gresley are known. Bittern coasts through the station on its way to Minehead with two Type 67 diesels in tow on a long charter train. Boarding another train, I continued my journey and sat back and watched as the lovely Somerset countryside drifted slowly past the windows. Our next stop will be Bittern, where the West Somerset Railway's workshops are located and can be seen on the right-hand side, together with most of the workforce who are out spotting locos. As we arrive, another train hauled by a small prairie tank locomotive is just about to leave. Once it had gone, another visiting loco could be seen, number 6024, King Edward I. Unfortunately, the engine had developed a fault and couldn't run. My train continued on its way, carrying me deep into the heart of the country. This was the most perfect time to visit Somerset, with the spring lambs and sheep enjoying the sun, but occasionally being perturbed by the sound of the passing trains. Journeying on, it's not long before we come to what I consider the most delightful station on the line, and that is Stockholm. Here, in an almost garden setting, is the most delightful little station with the great seat of Stockholm there. And with a toot and a great cloud of steam, we depart Stockholm. As always, we get a friendly wave from passengers and station staff as we pick up speed and continue on the next stage of the journey. It's not long before we arrive at the award-winning station of Crocombe Heathfield, where photographers, passengers and interested spectators have already gathered. This is one of the passing places on the West Somerset Railway, and looking out onto the other side, the opposite platform, we see a train coming in the opposite direction. As it passes, we can see it's another double-headed combination with Braunton, the West Somerset Railway's own West Country class engine, behind the Sherwood Forester. After a brief stop, and with the line clear now in both directions, both trains can depart and we continue on our way. The train is now on the last part of the journey and nearing the end of the line. Passing yet more photographers, we approach Bishop's Lydeard, and there we see another loco waiting in readiness to take this train back to Minehead as soon as we have stopped at the station. Bishop's Lydeard station is a hive of activity. And one enterprising trader has found a very interesting way to show off his wares. The loco we saw has now changed tracks and is ready to link up to the rear of my train. This is another of the visiting locomotives to the gala and is a West Country Pass Pacific Eddystone. As the crew make their final preparations, crowds, both young and old, gather to look at the engine. From the other platform, the lines of the locomotive can be seen clearly as Eddystone waits to depart. Meanwhile, from the opposite direction, a little ferry tank engine has arrived with a shuttle train that runs a few miles backwards and forwards. And here the driver chats happily to interested spectators. But there's no time to relax, as another train is arriving from Minehead with a Great Western Railway engine in charge. As passengers disembark, another loco, having been coaled and watered, moves slowly through the station. It's the unmistakable shape of the former LNER Streamline Pacifics. This is Bittern again. Number 60019. And take note of the rear of the tender, where you will see a corridor connection. There was a door in the tender and a narrow corridor where relief crews could move from the first carriage through the corridor onto the footplate and take over running of the engine whilst still on the move. As Bittern slowly backs up to its train, one can appreciate the classic lines of this beautiful engine. There were about 35 all told built, but only 6 have remained. One is in America and the other one in Canada. All the rest are in UK and in running order. And now, in time-honoured fashion, the fireman climbs down from the cab, makes his way to the rear of the tender to link up to the train. Once again, from the opposite direction, the little tank engine and its train comes in. Engine driver still very happy to chat to people. But looking down from a road bridge, you can see the crowds all eager to see one of the famous streamline locos of days gone by. This could well be a scene from the 1950s and illustrates how keen people are to come to these preserved railways. And then Bittern is away. Slowly at first, passing the little tank engine and its train. Cameras flashing. Children very excited. As Bittern slowly but surely pulls away from Bishop's Lydeard. And then accelerates away on the 1.5 hours trip to Minehead. Meanwhile, Royal Scot comes slowly to a stop to await its job of hauling the next train. Built in 1927, it has a very proud heritage, as the details on its nameplate confirm. This locomotive with the Royal Scot train was exhibited at the Century of Progress Exposition, Chicago, 1933, and made a tour of the Dominion of Canada and the United States of America. The engine and train covered 11,194 miles over the railroads of the North American continent and was inspected by 3,021,601 people. I never saw number 6100 Royal Scot in service, so it was a very nostalgic day to see this fine loco, now fully refurbished in its original Crimson Lake livery, hauling trains again. Only two of the Scots survive, this one and 6115 Scots Guardsman. Both are now back to mainline operation, and a great joy it is for railway preservationists to see these two fine engines once again hauling trains. The driver happily chats to visitors as he waits to move off. As the next train from Minehead arrives, once clear of the crossover point, the Royal Scot moves off, looking absolutely wonderful in the lovely afternoon sunshine. The engines have to move to around about 100 yards down the line and then back over a set of points and then slowly back down to join the train that's just come in. With crowds lining the platforms and on the bridge, with every viewpoint taken, this iconic locomotive backs slowly onto its train. The Royal Scot stands alongside the Flying Scotsman as being the two most famous locos in British railway history. Mallard, of course, broke the world speed record, but these two locos stand on an equal footing with each other. With the crowds milling around the loco, I don't have a great deal of time as I'm going to get on board for the trip back to Minehead. The photographers are everywhere, and in perfect weather, Royal Scot shows its paces. Today I have not only seen Royal Scot, but travelled behind it. My train pulls into the first station, where, again in time-honoured fashion, the station master lets everybody know where we are. After a brief stop at Crocombe Heathfield, Royal Scot sets off once again, with many passengers and interested people gazing on at the lovely locomotive. Just about everybody in Crocombe Heathfield must be out today, all eager to see the locomotive and to take their photographs. Photographers take up every vantage point they can along the line, on bridges, on grass banks, and on a beautiful day like today, who can blame them? They're all neatly lined up here so as not to get in each other's way, as Royal Scot steams majestically past. Moving on, and after arriving at Minehead, my train now waits for a locomotive. Hearing steam noises, I got back on board and saw to my delight Bittern on the next track, just moving off to join the train after changing tracks. Slowly, the streamlined Pacific number 60019 moves forward to connect up to its train. Although Minehead now has a turntable, it's not strong enough to take these very big engines, which is why they are running either chimney first or tender first. The smell of oil and steam takes one back to the days when as a boy one would stand on a platform, notebook in hand, and busily record the numbers. And here it's all happening again, 50 or 60 years later. But now I record them on film. As Bittern waits to take the train back to Bishop's Lydeard, I make my way down the platform. There's the turntable again. And the bookstalls. And to where Royal Scot is parked, after hauling my train back from Bishop's Lydeard. In the late afternoon sunshine, and looking absolutely stunning, I take my last view of this Royal Scot before saying goodbye to the West Somerset Railway until the next time, and make my way back to the Northfield Hotel. It's a good job the hotel has a spacious car park. It certainly needs it with its many guests. With birds singing in the trees, the grounds make for a restful and peaceful location after a hectic day's filming. There's even a palm tree or two, whilst the terrace looks very inviting. But the jewel in the crown of the Northfield is the restaurant. This is the Oak Room, surrounded by beautiful oak panelling. It is elegant, sophisticated and friendly. The food is truly wonderful, whilst the choice is both varied and very interesting. Adjacent to the Oak Room is another part of the restaurant, with large windows looking out onto the grounds and the Severn estuary. With a last look at my favourite corner and the hotel itself, it's time to leave. But the memory of seeing the Royal Scot will live on for a very long time.